Hello, everyone. My name is Rach. I'm a very grateful, recovered alcoholic and addict. And welcome to Infinite Power and Love. It's the third one now, isn't it? Oh my gosh, that's gone really quickly. So we're in the forward to the second edition. We're on page XVII. So just as a tiny little recap, we started off straight going to page 44. This is where, to get people to qualify if they are an alcoholic before we take them through the book. And we've got that blank page on the start. We went over the symbol and what that means, recovery, unity and service, mind, body and spirit, how important it is, the steps, the traditions and the concept. And then that gorgeous infinite circle around the symbol, which means, as we've just been speaking about before the meeting, why is it that this thing still works decades and decades in? Because it's infinite, it's magic, it's spiritual. So, and then we just went over the preface where they told us that key piece of information about this program has been left completely untouched. And that is because, obviously now they've rewritten a book, the other version, but we're obviously still going from this one. And in 85 years, it's been left completely untouched because it absolutely works. It's guaranteed if done fearlessly and thoroughly. And then the forward to the first edition, that key piece of information in that first paragraph to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. And I'm so pleased that you're all here, even though I put in the little blurb that we're in the forward to the second edition, because afterwards I thought, I wonder if that will put some people off. But the real big book lovers will always show up because there's so much gold in the book, right? When it starts to work for us, then we actually have an unbelievable amount of respect for this amazing literature, which has transformed so many people's lives. So the forward to the second edition is just giving us a bit of history about AA. And they've just talked about, that Bill Wilson, the stockbroker, was relieved of his alcoholic obsession by a sudden spiritual experience following a meeting with an alcoholic friend. So Ebby Thatcher came to see Bill Wilson, and Bill Wilson had been in hospital with Dr. Silkworth, who gave him the information about that this is an illness. He could see that it was an illness, this obsession of the mind that takes people back to the thing again and again and again, even though they don't want to drink, they keep on drinking. And this phenomenon of craving, this allergy of the body, and all of these pieces of the puzzle go together. And Ebby Thatcher brought the tenets of the Oxford Group, which was the religious movement that Ebby Thatcher got well and had a spiritual awakening. So we've gone over on those 2 pages on XVI and XVII. What we did last week is they're already telling us twice that we must, to save ourselves. He suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another, any excuse to get the sign out. Oh, you can see how sparkly it is. So they're telling us so early on. And then on the top of page XVII, it says it also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. So whenever I'm working with someone or whenever I'm talking with someone, if there's like a gap in, you speak to loads of people in recovery. Well, I don't know if you do, but there's so many people that we can speak to. And if anybody is like in the malady, I always ask them 2 questions. One is, have you completed all 12 steps? Not 8, not 9, not 10. Have you completed all your, when I say completed, have you done it fearlessly and thoroughly? And are you maintaining those growth steps, 10, 11, and 12 once you're through the chunk of the work. And the second question is, are you giving it away? Are you sponsoring? And it's an eye-opener when you hear from people that say, yeah, no, I have done all the steps, but I'm not sponsoring. And it's like, that's such a big chunk of our program, and it's telling us very early on that this is vital to permanent recovery. So we're just down at the bottom of that page, and it says, with the appearance of the new book, a great deal began to happen. So Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, the noted clergyman, reviewed it with approval. Now, this clergyman of his time was a male priest. He was a Christian priest, and he was so popular that he would literally fill football stadiums. You know, in America, you've got the preaching and the religious. This guy used to fill football stadiums. So when he reviewed it with approval, it was like brilliant. He really believed in AA, and he gave us a good shout out. In the fall of 1939, Fulton Ausler, then editor of Liberty, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics and God. This brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. So I always love to think about this little New York office. Imagine back in the day when everything was like handwritten. Imagine this tiny little office getting a weekly or monthly magazine out. Imagine receiving 800 letters from one article. So this is the power of identification. And what's happened here is, what goes on to tell us is, each inquiry was painstakingly answered. And I love that. And it makes me think of, which I sometimes struggle to do in all honesty, but it really reminds me when it says each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Am I following up with newcomers? When somebody reaches out and maybe I connect with them in a meeting, am I following up with them to see how they are? Because I remember when I was new, it was all a little bit strange. I went to a meeting and loads of people gave me their number. I didn't know who they were. I didn't want to hear myself talk, let alone tell all my problems to everyone else. So they're demonstrating what they did here is they followed up and helped people. And I actually made a spreadsheet at one point, but now what I do when I speak to a newcomer, I know I'm so funny, I made a spreadsheet of people to follow up with. I put whatever fellowship they're in, and then I put their name, and then I put newcomer. Or now I've got so many numbers in my phone that I put where I met them. So the initial of the meeting that I met them at. But then what it means is, you know, when it says nothing so much will ensure immunity as one alcoholic working with another on page 89, I'm misquoting it now, I've got to go there, sorry, not sorry, I want to get it right. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. And it says, you know, that we need to work with other alcoholics to get over the trials and low spots ahead. So if ever I'm like, what can I do? I'm in a funk, I'm in self. You know, on page 84, it tells us the Wadat: watch, ask, discuss, amends, and resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Well, now I can just go in my phone and put in newcomer, and I've got a list of people to follow up with. So that's just a little tip if you want to take that. So each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Pamphlets and books were sent out. So literature, again, people were sticking to the clear-cut direction. And the pamphlets, my sponsor is a massive fan of the pamphlets. Businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. So again, people doing service and sharing and distributing and hooking people up. You know, oh, I know someone, and now we've got this global fellowship, haven't we, that we can spread the news. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. So again, it kind of reaffirms that back in the day, before all of these meetings, we are so spoiled now. We've got meetings in person, we've got meetings on Zoom all day, every day. What this is telling us is that people were getting well back in the day from working just with this book and maybe with one other person. New groups could be transmitted in the web. So by the end of 1939, it was estimated that 800 alcoholics were on their way to recovery. So again, this reminds me of, remember they said painstakingly. Painstakingly doesn't actually mean staked with pain, as I thought that it meant. Painstaking, it means thoroughly, so meticulously. And this shows that from the first 100 or 80, whatever people, it's now, because they've followed up with these newcomers, it's jumped up to 800. So, you know, we can never get bored in recovery, right? Because there's always someone to help or action that we can take to, there's people dying out there, right? So in the spring of 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends, to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. So John D. Rockefeller was a very, very wealthy financier, and I love this word. It's a struggle to get it out though. Philanthropist. Try and say it quickly 5 times. Philanthropist. I won't do it 5 times, but so he's invited people round to tell their stories. Again, this identification, this is how it works for us. Hearing somebody tell our story. News of this got on the world wires. Inquiries poured in again, and many people went to the bookstores to get the book Alcoholics Anonymous. What have I got here? So back in the day, I've got in my little book here that it cost $3.50 back then, which is the equivalent of $50 now. Don't quote me on that, but that is written in my book, so I will have got it from a book study somewhere. By March 1941, the membership had shot up to 2,000. Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that alcoholics in need of help really deluged us. So deluged means floods of water. So they were drenched by all of the people flooding in because they found this solution and they started sharing that they were getting well. And that's the attraction rather than promotion, isn't it? This is us proving that this works, and the ripple effect is that people that can relate to us are like drawn in. So by the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. The mushrooming process was in full swing. AA had become a national institution. So they're just going from strength to strength. And it says, our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. The test that it faced was this. Oh, here we go. Could these large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? So erstwhile means former. So, and erratic means unpredictable. So they used to be erratic, unpredictable alcoholics. Could they meet and work together? Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms which would split AA apart? And a schism means a division. Soon AA was beset by these very problems on every side and in every group. And I was thinking, and still, we still have that today, right? I mean, going to a group conscience, thinking about the magic of this fellowship. AA has never died. It started back in the day, and it's just gone from strength to strength. This was even before the fellowship as it was in 1955. Oh yeah, so the traditions came out in 1946, right? So it definitely is magic. It's divine that there's something powering this thing. I mean, thank God for the traditions, because otherwise, think of all the egoic, self-centered, power-hungry, unwell people trying to control the show. Think of what we do to our own lives, let alone those of others. It's scary, but there's magic in this thing because it stayed strong. So, but out of this, soon AA was beset by all these very problems on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to, oh, that sounds like a must to me, had to hang together or die separately. Now this, you know, we're going to talk about the traditions now, but in my book, I've got tradition 1. We had to, there's another must, we had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene. The tradition 1 is our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So they had to keep us together because, and this is literally like a fact, isn't it? That my drinking, my addiction, my alcoholism wants me separated, alone, detached, in self-pity, resentment, dishonesty, fear. So I can be separate. The delusion of my illness makes me think, actually, I'm okay, even if I'm not okay. It's only when I show up, and especially if I work with someone, if I work with another woman, I can see myself in her. When I see step 1, I'm like, wow, I remember feeling like that. I remember thinking like that. And some of the, you know, when you do a step 5 with someone, you're like, that's me. We share the same fears. We've got the same character defects. It's like I'm passing on this wisdom that was passed to me, and it's like I need to hear it as much as they do. That's the magic of it. So as we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, so we had to evolve principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive. So to survive, to get through these challenging times with the erstwhile erratic alcoholics and function effectively. So it was thought that and they get on this page, this is them talking through how the traditions came into play. And I just want to show you. I'm sure many people have seen it, but we've got the 12 steps and 12 traditions. So that was, you know, a list of essays that Bill Wilson wrote. I think it was 16 years after the big book. And that's really helpful. But also this is really helpful. And this is only a couple of pounds And if you speak to your literature person in your home group, or you could take it to your group conscience, you can ask them to get these in for your home group. And they do the illustrated guide, which is like a simplified explanation with pictures, which I find really helpful. So they've got that for the traditions and they've got that for the concepts as well. So we're just going to go through, and I will read the tradition alongside it as it shows up in this page, on this page. So it says, it was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society. So that's our third tradition. And the third tradition states, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. It says that our leaders might serve but never govern. So that's tradition 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. And then back to the big book, that each group was to be autonomous. That's our fourth tradition. So we've got each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. And there was to be no professional class of therapy. That's tradition 8. So we've got Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centres may employ special workers. We're just on page XIX. There were to be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. Tradition 7. We've got every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Then it says there was to be the least possible organisation. That's tradition 9. AA as such ought never be organised, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. So, even in our service centres, apologies, that's tradition 9. Our public relations were to be based upon attraction rather than promotion. That's tradition 11. I'll just carry on reading because it carries on. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and film. So we've got, actually, is that 12? One sec, anonymous. Ooh, right, let me read 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And I've also got in my book internet, because now we're so heavily, online. And then we've got, and in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. Now I've got in this, and I might be not correct, but I've got 10 and 6 on these traditions. So I'm going to read both. I'm seeing some nodding heads. And I did check it with 2 tradition-y people. So tradition-y people. I love the tradition-y people, by the way. So 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. And 10 is Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. So I'll just carry on reading and then I'll just explain a little bit. So this was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book. Though none of these principles had the force of rules or laws, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held at Cleveland. Today, the remarkable, that's a good word, isn't it? Remarkable, absolutely astonishing, amazing, remarkable unity. That's our first tradition again of AA, is one of the greatest assets that our society has. So the reason, you know, when I first came in, the traditions were just, people read it out, and I used to use it as a time to zone out because it was just so beyond my brain capacity at that time. But when we spoke about the symbol, you know, we've got these 36 principles, and just for the newer members, because I know there are some newer members on, recovery being at the base, that represents the 12 steps, and the 12 steps are what keeps me safe and well. But the unity bit, the side of the triangles that represents unity, that represents the 12 traditions. Now, if we didn't have these traditions, what has been proven is that the groups don't last. Something happens, they don't have group consciences, they forget their fifth tradition, which is, we didn't read that one out, each group has got one primary purpose: to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. And there are these fantastic group questions that you can take to your group conscience, which help keep the meetings healthy and align with the traditions. And the reason that, I mean, you might not be able to see this picture here, but this is all of the people in AA are feeding their experience into this container. That's how the traditions were formed. What works? How can we stay unified? Because we know that if we don't stay unified, we die separately. So how can we keep the groups healthy? And that's why the traditions are so important. And I've been procrastinating about doing a traditions workshop. I've attended them before, but I've never taken them. And like with the big book and becoming a sponsor, the best way to learn is to teach it, right? Because you have to throw yourself in, you know. So yeah, and there are some brilliant tradition-y people out there who are so helpful and are willing to, you know, share their experience. So highly encourage all of us to be brave and jump into the traditions and the concepts as well. So while the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. For this, there were two principal reasons: the large numbers of recoveries. So we've already seen, this is like statistically, factually, that we've already said at the beginning of this forward, it says a wholesale miracle has taken place. It's 1955, it's 16 years since the first edition, and they've got 6,000 groups whose members number far above, I'm just looking on page XV at the beginning of the forward and second, 150,000 recovered alcoholics. That's some good evidence there, right? That this thing works. And now we can look at the fellowship today and it's just huge. So it says, large number of recoveries and reunited homes. Beautiful. Parents getting their children back. Children getting their parents back. Families being reunited. People getting their lives and their health back. Becoming good citizens, good employees, good employers. You know, this is like amazing, isn't it? What we've got on offer. So these made their impressions everywhere. Here we go. This is really important. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried. I've put a question mark there. am I willing to really try? And I'm going to put a little cross-reference in here to, I think I didn't do it. Yeah. So a little cross-reference to page 58, where it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I love that line. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. So am I really going to try to give myself to this simple program? It says, of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once. Now, I love to highlight in the big book where it tells me that I can get well at once, quickly, suddenly, immediately. It's telling me that it is possible. And I like to shout about that to newcomers, because let's look at the evidence of how this thing works. It's not everybody's experience, but those who come to AA or whatever fellowship and really try, a lot of them can get sober at once if they fearlessly and thoroughly follow the clear-cut direction. What's the other 50%? Those who cannot or will not follow the direction, right? It's anybody who's on the fence, maybe not willing to throw themselves in. So it is possible. 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder who stayed on with AA showed improvement. So these were the figures back then in 1955. So yes, the fellowship was smaller than it is now. So the stats are going to obviously be different because of the amount of humans that are in recovery. But the statistics of that are 75% of people were getting well. Now, why is that? You know, and there's loads of theories around it, and I was even listening to Joe and Charlie, and they were talking about it. I don't know when the Joe and Charlie tapes got released, but they were saying back then, what did people have to go by? The big book. Once it was written, they had their literature, which they went off before. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't feel confident enough to share it. I know, yet they had some spiritual literature before the big book was written. But what they used to talk about, they followed this clear-cut direction that started this fellowship. And what has happened now is, I heard it like called watered down. Have you heard of people talking about watered down AA, watered down recovery? And, you know, with the expansion of all these other solutions, and, you know, Joe and Charlie worded it very well, because there's more treatment centers out there now. And treatment centers can be amazing for people that need to be removed from their substance. And they can be really helpful. But unfortunately, this is a multi-million, if not billion-pound a year industry where people are monetizing an illness that can't be paid for. It's a spiritual solution. The 12 steps take me to a psychic change, a spiritual awakening. You can't buy it. So now there's lots of different other like methods of, oh, we know what it is. It's this, it's this, it's this. But in this book, it explains to us very clearly what a real alcoholic is, what that looks like. And it says that only a spiritual solution will work. So back in the day, they were very raw and stayed very close to the direction. And now we've kind of, you know, sometimes people mistake an AA or a meeting for a therapy session, like group therapy where we've come to chat about how we feel. And that's not, Bill Wilson stated that the main purpose of an AA meeting is to practice and teach the 12 steps, because that's how we can get well. We've got sponsors and everything to do inventory. And they do say in the book that they wanted a place where newcomers could come and bring their problems. But obviously they had enough home group members to talk about the solution as well. It's okay to talk about problems, but as long as we're following up with the action of the program. So the numbers have changed drastically, right? We're nowhere near 75% success rate. I don't know what we are, but I think it's like 3%, 10. Yeah, I thought it was under 10. It's under 10% now. You know, people are dying of this illness. So other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program, but great numbers of these, about 2 out of 3, began to return as time passed. So yeah, just I've got it in my book here. Back in the day, people were talking about the 12 steps. So this is how I can tell a healthy meeting is a meeting that I go to where I'm recognized as a newcomer. They're talking about the 12 steps. They ask me if I know about what sponsorship is. They ask me, have I got a big book? Am I connected? I don't give my number to newcomers anymore. I take their number. Newcomers don't pick up the phone and call. So it's my responsibility to reach out to them, because it tells me in the book to seek out somebody else to work with. Make the approach. I feel really high energy. I hope I'm not sounding preachy in any way, shape, or form. Okay, I've got some. Okay, cool. So another reason for the wide acceptance of AA was the ministration of friends. Ministration it's a formal noun, and it means the act of helping or providing for someone's needs. So the act of helping or providing for someone's needs. So it was the ministration of friends in medicine, religion, and the press, together with innumerable others who became our able and persistent advocates. Without such support, AA could have made only the slowest progress. Some of the recommendations of AA's early medical and religious friends will be found further on in this book. And this is so beautiful, because I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but do you remember coming into recovery and feeling so like ashamed and embarrassed and like, how am I going to tell people that this is my story, that I'm an alcoholic or an addict? And then if and when you have disclosed that to people are so supportive. They're so encouraging. Because if you think about it, I don't know many people who aren't affected in some way by alcoholism and addiction. They might have a family member or somebody that they know of, that they've had an experience. So back in the day, they were shocked to find out the support and encouragement from medical professionals, religious people, because this is a fact. People are dying, right? Good people are withering away with this illness. So Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. Yeah. Did you come into the rooms and think that it was, when everyone stood around and did the serenity prayer in a circle, and it's like, God, freaks so many people out, freaked me out. Neither does AA take any particular medical point of view. Though we cooperate widely with the men of medicine as well as with the men of religion. Oh, sorry, I read that in a weird way. Alcohol being no respecter of persons. So true, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you're from, what your bank account looks like, what your background is. And that is, in a way, the beauty. If you think about it, now that we're in the solution, it goes back to that first tradition, doesn't it? That unity. We've all been brought together. This horrific killer illness has brought us all together, and now we're united in a way that is just absolutely magic. So alcohol being no respecter of persons, we are an accurate cross-section of America, and in distant lands, the same democratic evening up process is now going on. By personal religious affiliation, we include Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Hindus, and even a sprinkling of Muslims and Buddhists. More than 15% of us are women. And obviously, when this was written back in the day, that may have shocked them a little bit, because they were just a certain class of people. What did they know? They could relate to themselves. And now it's like it's spread around the world, and they're realizing that it doesn't matter where you're from, what your story is, we can all stick together. And that has been our experience. So at present, our membership is pyramiding at the rate of about 20% a year. So far, upon the total problem of several million actual or potential alcoholics in the world, we have made only a scratch. In all probability, we shall never be able to touch more than a fair fraction of the alcohol problem in all its ramifications. Ramifications meaning complex, unwelcome consequences. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. What that means is control of the supply. Because I just thought of the board game Monopoly, but control of supply. Yet it is our great hope that all who, let me get this right, that all those who have as yet found no answer, I've underlined no answer. Again, we're only in the forward to the second edition, and they're saying that have you found another answer? Because I haven't. There was nothing that worked for me. So they're saying that I found no answer, may begin to find one in the pages of this book, and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. I love that. Somebody once, I heard it in a share, they said, because there's the Broad and Roomy, a highway, there's another reference to a highway, I can't remember where it is now. And she was like, what is a highway? It's a road specially made to be a direct route. Instead of having long, windy roads that go all around the houses, a highway is built to be broad and roomy, and it goes directly. So we're, to presently join on a high road to a new freedom, like nothing we've ever experienced before. This new freedom. What time are we on? Okay, we might get through this next. Well, let's see how we get on. So forward to the third edition. So 21 years on from the second, and 37 years since the book was published. So by March 1976, when this edition went to the printer, the total worldwide membership of Alcoholics Anonymous was conservatively estimated at more than 1 million, with almost 28,000 groups meeting in over 90 countries. I love that. I love thinking about those 90. We're on the forward to the third edition, so it's XXII, Roman numerals 22. Yeah, I think about these 90 countries and just think about the country. I mean, some people may be really well traveled, and may have gone to loads of different countries. But imagine 90 different countries. Isn't that incredible? And that was back in 1976. So surveys of groups in the United States and Canada indicate that AA is reaching out not only to more and more people, but to a wider and wider range. Women now make up more than 1/4 of the membership. Among newer members, the proportion is nearly 1/3. And, you know, back in the day, it just wasn't as common. So even though the way this is written is, you know, Page always talks about this, that the fact that they even included this, you know, men and women was quite a big deal back then, because it was quite predominantly male, you know, male dominated. So I kind of let them off for this age. This book is absolute gold. It's magic. You know, 7% of AAs surveyed are less than 30 years of age. Among them, many in their teens. So that's even back then, you know. The basic principles, so that's the 12 steps, basic principles of the AA program. And those principles as well, we don't really label them as that. I used to, like, oh, hope, faith, and that there's a word for that when you, the principles are the actual steps, all of the steps, but they do have these amazing descriptive words like, you know, humility and courage and integrity, and willingness and service and love and faith and hope, that we can align in certain fellowships. We go along those with the steps. So the basic principles of the AA program, it appears, hold good for individuals with many different lifestyles, just as the program has brought recovery to those of many different nationalities. The 12 steps that summarize the program may be called Los 12 Pasos in one country, or Les 12 Étapes in another, so that's Spanish and French, but they trace exactly the same path to recovery that was blazed by the earliest members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love that sentence, because I think of like this path that has been blazed. Like, imagine this path has been set on fire and lit up, and it's now really bright and shining, and all I need to do is fearlessly and thoroughly follow this path. And the other thing I love about this little sentence here is that, well, all of this bit, actually, when it talks about all the different countries, it's like, I like to imagine little community buildings or churches or little spaces all around the world where people are sitting around in a circle studying this book, sharing their experience, strength, and hope. The magic that happens when a newcomer walks into a meeting broken and scared and lonely and afraid, and they feel something. I literally, I get goosebumps. Like, I've got goosebumps that they feel this power, that there's a bit of hope, that they are not alone, and that together we can help show them this path. And yeah, another thing, I've just distracted a little bit, but this idea of fearlessly and thoroughly following a path, and the fact that this path has been blazed, you know, I don't need to create the path. I don't need to, the only way I get lost is when I go off track. Really, I just need to get back on this amazing path that has been walked. The simplicity of the program is that it's been tried and tested by millions of people before me. I just need to pay attention to the two simple facts: what works, what doesn't work. Keep it simple. What works, what doesn't work. So in spite of the great increase in size and in the size and span of the fellowship, at its core, it remains simple. There we go. There's that word. I love it. Simple and personal. Each day, somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope. Beautiful, that identification. I've squiggly underlined begins. In the other book study, we're very wordy and we look up all of the words. And I realized that commence was one of my one of my favorite words now, because it means begin. And in the big book, there's lots of references to commence, begin. You know, God commenced to work miracles in our lives. I'm paraphrasing, but when it says it begins, it means that it doesn't matter where I'm at. I can always begin again. You know, I've got an opportunity to reset. And this reminds me again, it's telling me in another way the importance of step 12. That giving this away, one alcoholic talking with another, this is how I get to keep it. So I've got, we might be able to get through this next bit. We'll see. Okay, so forward to the 4th edition. This 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, so this is 25 years later than the 3rd edition, came off the press in November 2001 at the start of the new millennium. Since the 3rd edition was published in 1976, worldwide membership of AA has just about doubled to an estimated 2 million or more, with nearly 100,000 there we go, groups meeting in approximately 150 countries around the world. Isn't that amazing? We're all connected. We've all got this common problem and a common solution. And the bit that I forgot to say is that the 12 steps, the simplicity of this program is the 12 steps never changes. It's the same for all of us. So if we're not feeling lit up by recovery, that's okay. But there are people that we could start to, you know, hang out with and be like, well, what are you doing? How are you working your program? Because you seem to be enjoying it. So literature is named 3 times in this next paragraph. So literature has played a major role in AA's growth, and a striking phenomenon of the past quarter century has been the explosion of translations of our basic literature, there's that word again, into many languages and dialects. In country after country where the AA seed was planted, it has taken root, slowly at first, then growing by leaps and bounds when literature has become available. So there's quite a few references in the big book to growth and growing and seeds and taking root and rooted in new soil. And I love those kind of analogies. There's lots of references to building, foundations and structure, but there's also loads of things about growth. So currently, Alcoholics Anonymous has been translated into 43 languages. Did I just read that? As the message of recovery has reached larger numbers of people, it has also touched the lives of a vastly greater variety of suffering alcoholics. When the phrase, "we are people who normally would not mix," page 17 of this book, was written in 1939, it referred to a fellowship composed largely of men and a few women with quite similar social, ethnic, and economic backgrounds. Like so much of AA's basic text, there's that basic text again. Let's keep it simple. Let's go back to the basic core Holy Grail, the clear-cut direction, 164 pages with the doctor's opinion. That's what we need. Those words have proved to be far more visionary than the founding members could have ever imagined. The stories added to this edition represent a membership whose characteristics of age, gender, race, and culture have widened and deepened to encompass virtually everyone the first 100 members could have hoped to reach. Isn't it amazing that we're all here on this meeting today, and we are all, I always forget this word, when you're not disciples, that's a really religious word. We're all, forget the word, if someone knows it, you can put it in the chat. We all come from Bill and Bob. This started in the kitchen when Ebby Thatcher was talking to Bill Wilson, and we're all, I can't think of the word. Someone will help me. I'll just finish this paragraph and then we'll stop. So while our literature, there's that word again, has preserved the integrity of the AA message. So that's a really powerful statement there. Our literature has preserved the integrity of the AA message. Sweeping changes in society as a whole are reflected in the new customs and practices within the fellowship. So customs and practices can be used in our groups because each group is autonomous. So we can decide the customs and practices. As long as we stick to the traditions, our meetings will stay healthy. Taking advantage of technological advances, for example, AA members with computers can participate. I've put a big question mark after participate, squiggly underlined it. When I take a new woman through the book, I ask her what her understanding of participate means. Because, and I always say, and this isn't me digging out anybody who hasn't got their camera on, but I say to newcomers especially, if you're going to do one meeting, let's just say you're going to do one meeting a day, if you show up to the meeting on time or after the meeting has started and don't have your camera on and you're busy doing stuff in the background, do you feel unified with the group? Does the group know who you are? Do you get to introduce yourself and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm so many days in. I live in this area. You know, somebody might be able to hook us up. Are we participate? Do we offer to do a reading? Am I participating? Because I've worked, one of my sponsees kind of sits behind. She attends meetings but doesn't engage. And I'm like, well, if that hasn't worked for you in the past, let's do something different. That word is a really important word. Participate in meetings online, sharing with fellow alcoholics across the country, all around the world. Fundamentally, though, the difference between an electronic meeting and the home group around the corner is only one of format. In any meeting, anywhere, AAs share experience, strength, and hope, beautiful, with each other in order to stay sober. That's another, like, I've squiggly underlined it. We do this in order to stay sober. How do I get to keep this? I have to give it away. They've already told me this how many times that we haven't even started the doctor's opinion. They're telling me over and over again, to keep it, I have to give it away. So in order to stay sober and help other alcoholics. So in this book study, we're gonna identify, we're gonna highlight every time it says help other alcoholics. My problem is that I'm selfish and self-centered. My solution is that I need to help others to get out of self. It says modem to modem or face to face. AAs speak, wait for it, the language of the heart. Isn't that beautiful? Language of the heart in all its power and simplicity. What a powerful statement. Language of the heart in all its power and simplicity. Right, that is my time. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to press stop on the recording.